What is going on, everybody? It is Jackson from JD Baseball Show and Dinger Dudes. And today I am joined by 2014 MLB All Star and 11-year MLB veteran Brandon Moss. Mr. Moss, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this interview. How's your day going? And how's baseball coaching going as well this summer?
Hey, happy to do it. Baseball's been going good. Our high school team won our third straight state championship just a couple weeks, well, just a week ago. So everything's been going great.
Congratulations, by the way, on that.
Thank you.
Super sad. Now I kind of want to dive into your playing career, if that's okay. Ask
Yeah,
some
let's
questions
go.
about that. So now in 2002, you were drafted right out of high school, out of Loganville High School, which is right up the road from where I am, by the Boston Red Sox at the age of 18. As somebody who was extremely young coming through the minor league system, what do you remember most about those early minor league days?
Um, I remember just having a good time with my teammates, and I remember having to learn from an early age how serious I had to take it.
Hmm.
I think that you go from high school baseball to where, I mean, I always took it serious, but it took me a whole summer to really grasp that this was my profession now. And I think that first summer that I was with the Red Sox and rookie ball, you know, I probably didn't take it the way I should have, and I just kind of had an eye opening moment that summer with how much I struggled, watching some of my friends struggle and go through it, and kind of identifying reasons why I struggled, and then coming to spring training the next year with a different mindset and a different grasp on what I was there to do. I think I realized how short the leash really was. But then, honestly, the minor leagues, man. I mean, I think every year that I was in the minor leagues, I thought uh, that I was probably going to get released that year. It was that hard. Every year was a grind. I didn't really know what I was doing most of the time. It was kind of a learn as you go kind of thing, and you get by on talent a lot in the minor leagues. And then you look up at the end of the year and you're like, how did I put that year together? And for me personally, I never really believed that I was as good of a ball player as the numbers that I was putting up in the minor leagues. I was always like, man, I feel like I just lucked my way through that season. And so when I got to the major leagues, I was a little overwhelmed with it because I was like, I really need to know what I'm doing right now, and I have no idea. So that was when the learning process really started because talent was no longer going to get me through. And it took a little bit to figure out who I was as a player.
So now, kind of piggybacking off of that, I had a previous interview with a former outfielder, Brandon Barnes, and I asked him a similar question like this. He said, "I want to ask you, how did you keep your routine like consistent?" What he told me was he continuously slugged energy drinks every single morning before practice. So, I mean, I kind of want to ask you, how did you keep your routine continuous
I was
during
the
the early minor
complete
league days?
opposite.
Mhm.
I guess that first year, like I said, I probably didn't take it the way I should have taken it, and I
Mhm.
didn't treat my body probably the way I should have. And then from that point on, um, I didn't really drink. I didn't really go out. It took everything to mentally prepare for the
Mhm.
next day. I mean, playing the game, going through practice for me was mentally draining. And so I really just kind of wanted to come home, hang out with my wife, talk about the game, talk about, whatever we were going to talk about, get up the next day and then do it all over again. Energy drinks were never really a thing. I didn't really drink those very much.
Mhm.
I still don't. I don't know. I didn't like the way they made me feel. I
Mhm.
always felt like if even coffee sometimes would make me feel like over amped.
Mhm.
And for me, the more amped I got, the bigger I got in the box and the harder I would swing and I would work underneath the ball. And it, for me, it took me years to realize that the more I slowed down and the longer I told myself to wait on the ball, the faster I was to it. I know you hear that all the time, but I didn't really
Mhm.
know how to translate that into into a physical thing in the game. And then finally, I realized like I actually hit better sitting off speed all the time, and I could catch up to any fastball. But if I looked fastball, for some reason, I got long with my swing and worked underneath the ball, and I couldn't hit anything. And it took me probably 3 years of major league time to figure that out. That's why I said, like, through the minor leagues, I would look back through the year and I'd be like, how did I just hit 280 or 270 or 300 or hit those home runs? Because sometimes it just felt like I was just living on a prayer. And then I get to the big leagues and it's like, all right, now I can't really do that anymore. And I just had to figure out how to slow the game down a little bit. And that was just one of the things that clicked after about three or 400, 500 at bats.
That's an amazing perspective to hear. Now, kind of continuing on the transition from minor league to major league, my next question relates to, you spent some time with several organizations before, having big breakout years in Oakland with Boston and Pittsburgh, to name a few. What was the grind like before you reached your stride in Oakland during those first couple years in the major leagues?
Boston was awesome. I mean, I guess when you're drafted by a team and then you make it to the big leagues as a team, like I had kind of accepted that how the Red Sox were at the time, which
Mhm.
was that we, as an organization, they would get big free agents and they would, we had Jacoby and we had Pedroia and Papelbon and Lester, and those guys were big parts of the team. And then I always kind of viewed myself as like maybe one day I'll get an opportunity to be an everyday player, but I was totally cool with being a role player on that team.
Mhm.
We were good and it was just
Mhm.
such a great group. And I had come up with those guys and I just loved being a part of that team. And then I got traded to Pittsburgh and it was just a completely different atmosphere. It was not a winning culture,
Mhm.
and it hadn't been. And you could tell that it was an organization that was kind of searching for that way. We had some good players, but it was a more selfish style of play. There really wasn't an emphasis on like say if you go over 2 with 2 walks and score 2 runs that night, you're not really feeling good about yourself. Even though if you did that in Boston, you're feeling good about yourself if you win. Like, man, I contributed. But when you're winning 60 games a year, 62 games a year, nobody's really counting those stats as helping the team when you're really trying to separate yourself with your own personal stats. And for some reason, like I just had a hard time with that style of play. And like I said, the more I focused on having good numbers, the worse my numbers seemed to get. But the more I played situational baseball and had a role, the better off I did. I think that's why once I left Boston, once I left Pittsburgh and just didn't quite get that role, I signed with Philly. I wanted to go back to a team that I was perfectly fine being a bench guy, even if I came up and down in the minor leagues to the major leagues, because I wanted to be on a team that their goal was to win games. And so I spent that year in the minor leagues with them and got a call up towards the end of the year. I really didn't have the opportunity or impact that I wanted there. And so it was just one of those things where it's like, okay, you know, I am getting older. I do need to kind of try to find a way to get more service time in the major leagues, or maybe try to find a way to get overseas and play in Japan. And so Oakland seemed like the perfect fit for that. And then, I mean, everything just worked out. I got called up in June of that year, and we were like 12 games below 500, but they didn't play like they were 12 games below 500. Like Bob Melvin had a way of instilling a culture. Like we were trying to win games. He would bunt, he would have guys steal bases. There was an emphasis on defense. There was an emphasis on platoon roles, and they made sense to me. They made sense that they were trying to create matchups to win ball games, and I just fit seamlessly into that concept. And Bob was just awesome in kind of helping me understand what my role was. And from that point on, like I gained confidence, and that was the most part. Kind of going back to the minor leagues when I said I really wasn't confident in anything I was doing. I didn't really get that confidence until I got to Oakland and started seeing that work that I had put in translate to the big leagues and establishing that routine. And then that once I saw that I could have success there, I got the confidence I needed. You can't have confidence without success. People say you can have confidence in your routine, but if your routine isn't translating to success, the confidence is not going to come. You need tangible results, and I was finally starting to get them in Oakland, and that was just a place that I just fit really well.
Kind of
Uh
crossed off
oh.
that kind of got the answer to my next question, so I'm going to cross off that next question. The next
All
question
right.
was talking about the the breakout year in Oakland, but I want to continue on your Oakland career with the Oakland Athletics, where you truly broke out and you talked about elevating stats and I guess bringing upon yourself more service time in the major leagues. And I want to bring up in 2014. Uh, skip a couple years to 2014. In 2014, you were elected to the 2014 MLB All Star game in Minneapolis, and I wanted to ask you, based on your career year in 2014, what was it like getting to experience an All Star game or an All Star weekend in Minneapolis during your career?
Well, I got to tell you, that whole year is an anomaly because I started that year out hurt. I
Yeah.
was in spring training and I already had a torn labrum in my hip, and I thought it was something in my back. And I had told Derek Barton in that year, I was like, dude, there is no way I make it through April in this season. Like, I'm telling you, just like, you're going to have to play a lot this year. And I mean, me and him were close buddies. I was just very honest about it to him. I was like, hey, just be ready to play a lot more. And somehow I got off to a good start and I was just able to play through the pain there for a while. And that right before the All Star break is really when it started to kind of get to where I was like, I'm almost at that point. And then the All Star break, I come back and I was fine for a couple weeks, and I think I fouled a ball off of my foot against Aaron Loop from the Blue Jays. And when I did that, I took an awkward like turn in the box, and I it kind of popped my hip a little bit. And from that point on, I just couldn't rotate anymore. So that year just turned into just that was just a crazy year. But the whole experience of the All Star game was probably one of the most overwhelming things for me that I've ever experienced, just because um, there's so much to take in. Like you get there, and from the minute you get there, you're doing interviews and you're doing all this All Star game stuff, the red carpet stuff. There's the All Star game parties. Family is coming in. You've got the home run derby that first night. You've got the game the next night. You're flying back. Honestly, like, it's a blur. That whole thing is a blur, and it was something that, like, I remember being in that game and just kind of taking it in for a second and just being like, this is something. And I always felt this way about milestones in the big leagues because, like I said before, like in the minor leagues, I always wondered if I would ever even get to the big leagues. I think a lot of players deal with that. They're like, it just seems so far away. And you get there and you're just like, no one can ever take this away from me. Like, I made an all-star team as a Major League Baseball player. And you go back to that, just being a little kid and having the dream of just making it to the big leagues, getting an at bat, and then here you are. You're playing on the same team in an all-star game with Miguel Cabrera, Mike Trout, Derek Jeter. It was his last all-star game. You've got, on the other side, you've got all the other guys. You got Utley's over there. You've got Adam Wainwright starting that game. It was just a surreal experience, and it's like, deep down, that they're on another level.
Mhm.
But for a night, you're like, man, this year I've been keeping up with these guys, and it's a feeling of pride that you get, to be honest. And it's just one of those things that I think that you just take it in, and you just, yeah, you're some guys are probably like, yeah, I'm here and I'm gonna be here for a while, but for me, I was just like, I can't believe that I got to this game this year being hurt the way I was hurt. And then it was just one of those things that I was like, nobody can ever take this away from me.
Great to hear this side from an MLB player because I believe out of the multiple interviews I've done with former MLB players, you're the first player that has ever been elected to an All-Star game that I've interviewed. So it's great to hear this side from a baseball player who got the opportunity to go to an All-Star game such as that. And I want to ask you, this isn't my next question, but you were part of the team. You mentioned the home run derby, and Yoenis Cespedes was your teammate. Did you ever like do some celebrations, some parties with Yoenis Cespedes after that home run derby win?
Man, I'm telling you, I was like the least likely person to go out. I didn't.
Mhm.
After the home run derby, I went back to the hotel and I think my wife and kids and me had dinner, or maybe we just went to bed. I don't know. I was so like, I just didn't. I was not. It was very rare that I would go out, and if I
Mhm.
did, maybe it was for the team dinner or with a couple guys that were kind of like minded like me, that were kind of quiet guys.
Mm.
But I didn't really drink, and I didn't really do things like that. So I was like, just not my thing. But me and Sespi were really close because before he signed with Oakland, before he came to the States, he was in the Dominican Republic, and we were on the same winter ball team
Hmm.
before he
Wow.
signed with the A's. So we had gotten to know each other before. So when he came to spring training that year, it was in a relationship that he had already established, which was one of the few, because of course he knew nobody coming over from Cuba, and he's just such a great guy. We had kids that were the same age. There was a little bit of a language barrier, but he attempted to speak enough English, and I attempted to speak enough Spanish to where we always just kind of understood each other. And then, of course, he got better at speaking English the longer he was over here. But he was just an awesome dude. And then it was so funny because he was so good at home run derbies that we would play all the time during batting practice when we were in Oakland, and it was just one of those things. He had such a swing that he could hit the ball so far. He's one of those guys that he had all world talent. He really did.
Yeah, that's a great thing to hear, and it's great that you already have built up team chemistry because team chemistry goes a long way, and you already built it up in the D Dominican League. And kind of relating to my next question, clearly that carried and translated to the MLB because later on that 2014 season, Oakland made the postseason, and it was one of the most electrifying playoff games that I had witnessed in my life. Now, unfortunately, it didn't turn in Oakland's favor, but you personally had an amazing performance. And I remember watching this. I was 10 years old in 2014 at the time. And you hit two moonshots, like obliterated the ball. And that what was the atmosphere like in that postseason?
That was probably so. Kansas City, man, they hadn't been to the postseason in forever.
Mm.
And they had kind of come along at the end of that year and made the postseason towards the end of the season. And we had faded really hard towards the end of the season. A couple of us had been hurt. We had lost Cespedes. We had picked up some pitch, and it was just a different looking team. But when we showed up, man, that place was rocking. And it was just one of those things where that was our third consecutive postseason, being in that situation. I think the first two, when we were playing the Tigers, I think those were just, we were such a young team that we all had a lot of lessons to learn about playing in
Mm.
the postseason and dealing with that kind of energy and kind of toning it down. And it goes back to that was the first game in the postseason that I had ever really been able to say, I am not going to look for a single fastball tonight. I'm going to sit off speed all night long. And it just so happened that James Shields was a guy I had faced a little bit. So I studied him. I studied him all night long the night before. And I was just like, okay, if he gets ahead of me with a cutter, I'm going to sit change up the next pitch. If he gets ahead of me with a two seamer, I'm going to, and I had this whole routine of the way I was going to sit on at bats to him. So sure enough, he gets ahead with a cutter on me on my first at bat. So I sit change up and he hangs one, not really hangs it, but I just stayed on it long enough and I hit a home run. The next at bat, I break my bat and hit a line out on a cutter. And then they bring in Jordan Ventura. And so when they brought him in, I you know what you're getting from him. He's going to get fastball. You're going to get heat. And so when they brought him in, I was just like, all I've got to do is make sure I don't chase inside. Don't look inside on this guy. Well, the first two pitches come inside and inside. And I'm like, don't chase. Don't start opening up. Just sit soft and allow your barrel to work. And he put a fastball down and I was able to get to it. But that night, that was just one of those nights where your approach locks in. You get the pitches to hit that you're looking for. You stay on them and you have that magical night. But unfortunately, man, our style and Kansas City styles could not have been more different. We had great starting pitching and a solid bullpen. They had solid starting pitching and a great bullpen. And we hit for power and drew walks. They didn't. They never walked, and they stole a ton of bases and hit for average. And I think that game played out as probably one of the best examples of contrasting styles on teams that you could ever watch. It was an awesome game. It was awful losing it. The plane flight home was awful. Packing up the stuff was awful when you lose that game. But I mean, we gave everything we had that game, and so did they, and it just happened to work out in their favor.
Again, it's great to hear this perspective from this and how you talk about a consistent plate approach because you see nowadays you see and you talked about like all you really saw was from Ventura was fastballs and all you see nowadays is fastballs. And you see guys like Paul Skeens topping out at like 103, Hunter Green 102, guys like Screwball who 100 plus. And it's great to see and hear from a plate approach perspective. Now, I wanted to ask towards more related towards the end of your career and in the off season afterwards, you were required hip surgery, and also during that off season, you were traded to Cleveland and then later traded to St. Louis. But you also had consistent seasons afterwards in St. Louis and Kansas City as well. I kind of wanted to ask you, what was the process like, I guess, dealing also from, trade acquisitions to surgery recovery, not just mentally, but physically as well?
I had a feeling I was going to get traded after Donaldson got traded.
Mhm.
It was just one of those things where I was arbitration eligible for the second or third time out of four times. I think it was the third time out of four times. And it just made sense that, I was going to get traded. So that wasn't that big of a surprise, but it was really disappointing.
Mhm.
Not that I was traded to Cleveland because they had a really good team too, and a cool ballpark, and everything was great about that. But I just loved Oakland. Oakland was like home. My my family loved it. We loved where we lived. I loved the stadium. I mean, it was honestly like it was just a place that I really fit, like I said. And so leaving there was really disappointing, but I understood it. But Cleveland was different in the sense of I wasn't quite 100% when I came back, but there was no way that I was going to not come back and try to be ready for opening day, regardless of if I was 100% or not. And I still hit some home runs that year there, but I just wasn't consistent. And unfortunately, I guess I just didn't fit what they were looking for there. So I got traded during at the deadline to St. Louis. And I mean, St. Louis was kind of like Oakland in that like I loved there. You know what I mean? It was a place that to me it was an easy place to play. And it's not me saying that other places were not good places to play. Pittsburgh was fine. Philly, I wasn't there very long. I told you I loved Boston. Oakland was obviously awesome, but St. Louis, man, like I don't know. There was this vibe there at the time that like just like I said about the Phillies and about Boston, like we were expected to win. And when you're playing on a team that's expected to win, and when things are applauded or when things are appreciated when you do them, and it's not necessarily having success in the box score, it makes it so much easier to play the game. When you got teammates coming in and you move a guy over or you make a play or you walk in a big situation and it leads to a run and they understand how big that is, that's a huge thing as far as like a confidence booster for you personally. It rewards you for playing the game the right way. And that's what I loved about St. Louis is that is what the fans loved. That is what the team loved. The coaching staff loved. If you were a guy that just tried to play the right way and play for your teammates, you fit in there. And that was probably, like I said, I loved Oakland. My family loved it there. I loved Boston. But me personally, as a player, for my own personal experience, St. Louis was my favorite place to play. And it was just because, like I said, like I love the game and the way that it's played, where you play for your teammates, and that's the kind of style that we tried to play. And the style of play that I brought, which was the power and the walks and just a little bit of defensive versatility, it was appreciated on that team. And I think as a player, that's what you want. You want your teammates to appreciate you. You want your teammates to like be like, man, we would want this guy. And that's how you felt there. You know what I mean?
Great to hear that, not just from like, a physical and career standpoint, but I feel like it's all about like situational circumstances. You overcame adversity with injury rehabilitation and recovery that way. And it's great to hear that you always kept a positive mindset, especially when going to St. Louis. And I'm so glad that you give St. Louis the praise that it does when it comes to like baseball team, baseball community, because a lot of people, not a lot of people do, and most of my friends are Cubs fans, so I get to hear it from them a lot. So it's great to hear a
Yeah.
positive side to St. Louis. Now, I kind of want to ask you because you retired in 2018, correct?
The spring of 2018, yeah, before the season started. Yep.
Before the season started. Now, I know you're a baseball coach, but for people who are watching and don't know, how do you stay connected with the game personally now?
Um, I really don't. I mean, not with the major league game.
Or
I don't
just
really.
baseball in general?
This is a weird thing. This is but baseball in general, yeah. I coach high school baseball. I help coach both of my kids. I got a kid that was a freshman this past year who was on our high school team. I helped with them and their summer ball team, and then I helped with my youngest and his travel ball team. But I also coach the high school team, and that's just to me, that's the way that I choose to be a part of the game is to make just like I was saying, I want kids to understand that baseball is so much more than just the hype that's around it and being the
Mhm.
best guy with stats. Today, everything in today is so selfish. Everything in today is so much about hype. And,
Mhm.
you look at these young players and their rankings on PG, you look at the showcases and you look at all this stuff. And I feel like a lot of that, while it's cool, I understand why kids love it. I genuinely believe that a lot of it is toxic for the kids because it gives a false sense of hype. It gives a false sense of team and selflessness, and it puts all the focus on you as a person and you individually. And that's just so opposite of what baseball is about. So for me, coaching is an opportunity to really preach the things that I believe in, and that's just the way that I try to give back to the game. I love baseball. Everything that has happened to me that is good in my life, other than marrying my wife, is due to probably baseball and my parents
Mhm.
and the way I was raised. But so I just want to give back in the ways that I can. So to me, is to teach kids the other ways that you can appreciate and enjoy the game beyond just what everybody else is telling you.
It's great that these young kids that you coach are getting amazing influence from, an amazing ball player who had tons of major league experience, and you're giving your perspective on what you saw during your career, during your minor leagues or growing up, and influencing those kids in that way. So I do want to kind of ask you some more fun questions, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Some more
yeah.
fun
Let's do
questions I
that.
had down here. So, I was doing some research on you earlier today. Is it true that you're a distant cousin of Alan Jackson?
I don't know. I think it is, but I can honestly tell you that I do not know. Maybe. I don't know. I'm gonna say yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely, absolutely. But I genuinely don't know.
I've never gotten the opportunity to ask somebody that they're related to, like, a famous country singer. So, that is, I
We're
mean,
going with yeah on that one, definitely.
I'll completely agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
So, now related to country music, I want to talk about your walk-up song. And I was going through some, more interview questions on you, and your walk-up song was Homeboy by Eric Church. And was there any sort of meaning towards choosing that song at all?
So I just like there were two songs that I used mainly for walk-up songs in my
Mm-hmm.
career. I did change it every now and then, but one was Homeboy and the other one was Simple Man by the Charlie Daniels Band.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, they just identify with my roots of staying grounded, and who I am, which is just a country boy. I feel like everybody loves the upbeat or the rap music, and to me, it just didn't suit me. So
Mm-hmm.
I just went with two songs that I love that had little lyrics in there to remind you, like, hey, remember who you are. You know what I mean? Just and be who you are and be proud of it. And I was.
I love the song Homeboy by Eric Church. I love a lot of, if I was a professional baseball player, me personally, I would choose a country song as a walk-up song. And a lot of people just don't seem to go that way for some reason, which I
What
really
would
do
you
not,
choose?
I really don't understand. I'm a big like Rascal Flatts, Jason Aldean, Blake Shelton kind of guy. So if I were to choose one, ooh, um,
It's
hmm,
hard.
Boys Around Here by Blake Shelton is a really solid
Yeah,
song that
I
I feel
used
like
that one time.
that that's awesome to hear, because
I
if I
did in
had the
Oakland.
opportunity to do it, then yeah, that would be my song.
That's a good one. I like it.
That'd be my song. The next fun question I actually have for you, because we have 10 minutes left in this meeting. You played in Boston. You mentioned you played in Pittsburgh, Philly, Kansas City, St. Louis, and Cleveland. What was the best food that you had during your major league career? It doesn't have to be one of those specific cities, but
Toronto.
Toronto.
Yeah, Toronto. There was a place. I think it was called. Is Eugene or George the one in Atlanta? All right, so it was a place called George. Jed Lowry took me there, and Jed Lowry always had the best. He had the best places to go eat. How he found these places, I don't know. But that guy was a food connoisseur, man. He was like, "We're going to eat here. Come with me, meet me here." I was like, "All right." It didn't matter where it was, what it sounded like. I knew if I was going with Jed, we were eating good. And so he had this place in Toronto called George, and it's like a tasting restaurant where they have like
Mhm.
a 7 course meal, and he had to sit at the chef's table. And I mean, they put stuff together that I would never eat. Like there are things that I will not eat, but I mean, of course I'm not going to tell the chef I'm not going to eat stuff even if it sounds bad. And I'm talking like I've never tasted food so good in my life. That place by far was the best place I had ever eaten.
I mean, I wish I could go to Toronto right now. You're making me
Dude, I'm
hungry right
telling
now.
you, it was unreal. Unreal.
Now, when I ask most of these players a question about the food, they would always say something maybe like a good burger or some barbecue in Memphis during the minor
Oh,
leagues. But
come on, man.
Toronto really shocked me as an answer.
Well, in food like that, the best food like that you'll ever get is the Philly cheesesteaks in the Philadelphia Phillies visiting clubhouse. There's nothing better when it comes to food like that. I don't know what they do to those cheesesteaks, but there's a competition amongst players to see who can eat the most, how you keep track of how many you get. Like I've never had anything like it. And that, if you're going to talk regular food, those by far. I mean, if those are a 10, nothing else is even a 6 that I've ever had. They're that good. That would take the cake in regular food for sure.
Yeah. I'll take a Philly cheesesteak challenge any day. I love Philly
Buddy,
cheesesteaks.
they're
I
unreal.
I love Philly cheesesteaks. Now, for my next fun question I have for you, you played in a really tough American League West division that featured pitchers such as Jared Weaver, Felix Hernandez, Yu Darvish, and a guy who's coming on later this summer for an interview for the podcast, CJ Wilson. So, who was the toughest pitcher you faced during your major league career?
The toughest pitcher I ever faced, the spring training count,
Yes.
Jose Fernandez.
Wow.
And it's not even close. There's no one I ever saw that had stuff like him. I have to feel like that would be what it was like for people facing Nolan Ryan. I had never seen anything like it. The ball exploded out of his hand. I hit a changeup that blew me up, and I thought it was like a 96-mile-an-hour sinker. It was like an 88-mile-an-hour changeup. I'm telling you, I had never seen anything like it ever. And I mean, you're talking facing guys like Verlander, like you said, Weaver. Yeah, I mean, facing the best of the best guys, but nothing compared to that.
Jose Fernandez was a true generational talent.
Yes.
I really wish his career continued longer, and I wish he was on the Cardinals during his career because we definitely needed a guy like Jose Fernandez on the team. But sticking with this AL West and athletics topic for my next fun question, you've been in some wild clubhouses. I feel like as a baseball athlete, you always have to have like great outfits to wear. Who was the best dressed teammate? You can include yourself in this, and who needed help with their style choice.
I needed help. I was definitely probably the worst dressed, me or Josh Reddick.
Hmm.
And then the best dressed, I mean, Josh Donaldson always looked pretty good. He always had some style. Cespedes, of course, always looked good. Coco dressed really good. Trying to think like, um, gosh, I feel like Yachty always looked good, but the Cardinals, we were all a bunch of white guys. Like we didn't dress, that we didn't look that great. So, but definitely, one of those guys that I said probably Donaldson or Cespedes. They always had a lot of style. I was always looked at them and I was like, I wish I had the time and energy to put into someone dressing me like that. But no, no. I just wore a collared shirt and I try. Anytime we were allowed to wear jeans, I was wearing jeans and cowboy boots. Like that's what I was going with. So me and Reddick were definitely the worst dressed.
It's very. I've never asked a professional ball player that question before, so it's great for you to admit when some styles just don't look right. But
Yeah, I am not a stylish person.
now, continuing on another fun question during your baseball career, if you had a movie about your baseball career, what would it be called, and which famous actor would you choose to play yourself?
Um, well, I don't know what it would be called. I would want it to be like a Rocky theme. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Just because I'm obsessed
Hmm.
with Rocky, and I always tried to like view myself as that underdog guy because it kind of gave me a little bit of a chip on my shoulder.
Hmm.
Whether I was or wasn't, that's the way I like to view myself. But I don't know what I would call the movie. But if I'm gonna get I can have anybody.
Yes,
I'm going like I want Channing Tatum to play me. Yeah,
I
I'm
see the
gonna like it's
resemblance.
my movie. It's my movie, so
Hmm.
I can have whoever I want. I'm going that. Yeah, I'm going with Channing Tatum. He can grow a beard. He can dye it
I,
red.
the
He can
resemblance
lose his hair.
is uncanny. Is
Yeah,
uncanny.
right. You
I
see
see
it.
it.
I
I
see
see
it
it.
too. I see it. It's my movie.
So the final question I do want to ask you before we wrap up this interview, any advice you give to kids or young prospects looking to make it to the big leagues one day as a former major leaguer and all-star as yourself?
Yeah, I would say there just a few things, and this is what I tell my son. Number one, enjoy the process. Don't get so caught up on the end result that that's where your only focus is. Enjoy the process because when it's over, that's what you're going to remember. You're going to remember the teammates you played with. You're going to remember the fun moments of the games, whether you were a big leaguer or an all-star or win a World Series or not. Like my World Series ring that I have from with the Red Sox, it sits in my
Mhm.
safe. I never even see it. You know what I mean? Like none of those things mean something to me personally, but they don't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. It wouldn't have taken away or added to the experience. So that's number one. Um, Number two, I would say embrace who you are. I think, like I was saying before, when I was first in the big leagues, I was so trying so hard. I was trying so hard to not get critiqued and not get exposed that I wasn't true to who I was and the style of play that made me good. And it took me years to be okay with that. It took me years to be okay with the guy being a guy that struck out a lot and hit home runs. I wanted to hit for average. So I would say embrace who you are and become the best version of that. And then the third thing that I would say is don't be afraid to give it everything you've got and fail. You know what I mean? Like, of course, I would have loved to have been a better than a career 237 hitter. I would have loved to have hit more than 160 home runs. But I know for a fact that I gave it everything I had. I know for a fact that part of the reason why my career got cut short was because I worked so hard and put my body through so much to try to get every ounce I could out of it. And I don't regret that one bit. I think I would have regretted not doing that. Even if the career had turned out better, it's harder for me as a person to accept leaving things on the table. And I think that that is what makes you proud of it in the end is knowing that you gave it everything you had. And so that would be the thing is don't be afraid to put yourself out there and give it everything you have and come up short because everybody comes up short somewhere. And those would be the three things. That would be what I would say. Embrace who you are. Don't be afraid to come up short and enjoy the process.
Great advice, and I feel like it applies in all aspects of life, all
It does.
opportunities, all jobs. But Mr. Moss, that is all the time we have today. Thank you so much for taking time to join the podcast. Hope to do this weekly, bi-weekly in the
Yeah.
future. I had such a great time. One of my favorite interviews I've done, and I hope you have an amazing day.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. Yeah. Feel free